Appreciate everybody joining us here today for the presentation on the top 10 style management tips to keep your Revit models clean and healthy. And today's focus will be using Ideate Explorer and StyleManager. My name is Sash Kazminejad, and I am the Customer Success Manager with Ideate Software. For those of you that don't know me, I'm located in Portland, Oregon. I'm a licensed architect with licensure out of the state of California, graduate of Montana State University. Been with Ideate now for 8 years, mostly focused on the Revit platform. With me today and fielding all the questions is my friend and colleague, Richard Taylor, who's located on the East Coast, just outside of Boston. Richard, say hi if you'd like to.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'll be typing or answering questions and typing the answers. So please feel free to type questions if you have questions during the presentation.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, please ask lots of questions. That's what we're here for. And Richard's really fast with the typing, so he'll be able to get some answers to you as quickly as possible. Okay, so why are we here today? And why does Ideate Software exist, for that matter? Well, we're here to really help you simplify your Revit data challenges. So our collection of tools really enable you to say goodbye to your laborious data editing and viewing and management tasks. And you can see kind of at the bottom of the screen a listing of our 5 major products that are really here to help you with these kinds of tasks. Now, for today's focus, as I mentioned before, we will just be looking at Ideate Explorer and StyleManager and some of the ways in which you can use these products to help you kind of expedite your models and make them clean and more efficient in terms of how they perform, and of course how you view your data as well. I also want to remind people, if you have any questions or want to know more about our software, be sure to look at ideatesoftware.com. We have a lot of information on there. So we have educational videos, live classes, including the ones that we're doing today with IMAGINiT. We also have a lot of great support. So if you currently subscribe to any of our software products or even just want to know more about them, feel free to reach out to us at support@ideatesoftware.com. More than happy to help. We also have a lot of great getting started guides, so for those that are downloading trials and want to learn how to get started with the software, we have a lot of great how-to kind of tutorials, and they're really laid out kind of step-by-step to help you get a good understanding of how the software is designed to be used. We also do our support and updating on the current version of Revit plus the 3 prior versions. So, today we're still with Revit 2021 and of course the 3 prior versions as well. And as part of the getting started guides, we have a lot of great content within our products to help people get started. Okay, so since we're here to talk about model health and standards, I just want to talk about some of the importance of addressing model health and standards. And this is not a full comprehensive list. There's actually a lot of other reasons why, but these are just some of the issues that maybe we run into from time to time within our projects, both from a model performance and a health issue as well. So, big one's just performance, right? We've all probably worked on really large models where we have really slow opening, really slow closing, and even just working the model where it's just kind of chugging along. It's a big problem. We have a lot of issues with model crashing or saving, or a lot of times you go to print, it's just really slow or chugging. Prints come out really large, right? And some of that stuff could just be the fact that projects are quite large, or maybe you're not adhering to modeling best practices, right? Another big one that we used to see a lot through our support side of things was model upgrade issues, where maybe you have a lot of warnings in your models and you try to upgrade them to the next version of Revit, and Revit just can't do it. And that's because you have to go back and clean up those warnings. And a lot of times it's just such a laborious task. And I'll admit, nobody here probably likes cleaning up warnings. But really the whole goal in all of this to address model health and standards is to really keep the project team and stakeholders happy. Cannot stress this enough. When your models aren't working well, your project team's not too happy, nobody's happy. So we want to make sure that we address these issues and keep everybody happy. Here's just some of the items that can lead to model health and standards issues. Loading rogue families. I cannot stress enough how important it is to vet families before you load them up into a project. Take it somewhere else, clean it up, review it, change things that need to be changed, whether you got to change parameters, merge styles or do anything like that before you bring it into a project. Loading groups, binding Revit files, because again, kind of like the old AutoCAD days, when you bring something in and bind it, you're bringing in all that extra stuff with it. Have you vetted that file before you brought it in? CAD files. I can tell you CAD files, even if you link them, do bring in extra data that you may or may not have wanted. So always be aware that with CAD files, there is a consequence to bringing them into your project, especially when you import them and explode them. As one of my former students said a long time ago, he called it shrapnel, right? When you explode a CAD file in your project, you will end up with Revit shrapnel. And I really like that term because he was absolutely right about that. Transfer project standards. A lot of times you select a category thinking, okay, it's all I'm bringing in. But in fact, you brought in a lot more with it. And Revit doesn't tell you what else it brought in as a result of transferring project standards. And other things that cause performance issues can be settings, especially for those of you that are on the MEP side of things or the structural side of things where you're turning on some volume calculations or analytical stuff. That just inherently can cause some performance issues as well. The big ones, excessive warnings, excessive model groups, excessive arrays. I will say careless software programming is also a cause of issues in Revit. If you're using small little bits of software that was free, or perhaps you're creating some of your own, whether you're using visual programming software or whatnot, you have to be very, very careful in terms of how you approach your programming, because there's so much more to Revit than just writing some simple scripts and executing on it. You really have to have a good understanding of what's going on under the hood. All this really leads to a good BIM execution plan. I cannot stress the importance of having a solid BIM execution plan. Get that in place, have a plan for cleaning up your models for both a standards and health issues. And remember, model health is typically a progressive problem. These are things that creep up on you over time. All right, so first product that I want to talk about is Ideate Explorer. I love Ideate Explorer. Richard has heard me say this many times. It is my day-to-day use tool in terms of finding my way around my entire model. Not only do I use Ideate Explorer for great model navigation and selecting of elements and double-clicking to zoom on them, I also use it to select and swap elements. Maybe I want to swap one line style for another. Maybe I want to select a family and swap it out for another one. Great product for helping with that. But furthermore, we can get in and get really under the hood with our selection. I can take a selection of elements and refine that selection based on a long list of parameters. I want to find, some of my ductwork elbows that are, 45 degrees or less. I can do that with a product like Ideate Explorer. I want to find all these elements that are hosted on level 1. No problem, we can do that. Help me find in-place families or pinned elements. That's where Explorer can really help you out. We have wonderful built-in model auditing that can help you with those tasks. And also for those of you that need to address warnings, we have a whole warnings management built right into the product. Ideate StyleManager is another great product. It's our newest product, and this is a game changer to me. For those of you that have to really do the deep dive, whether you're in families or you are in projects or you're working in your Revit templates, you really want to streamline those things and get your standards in alignment. This is the product to help you with that. While Explorer can help you select and move things to other styles, styles are used all over the place in your Revit projects, and a lot of times you don't have access to some of that information. You think you've swapped something out and you should be able to go to Purge Unuse and purge those elements out, but you find out you still can't purge them. Why not? Where are they being used? Well, this is a product that can help you really do that deep dive. This product should be part of your weekly auditing tasks on your projects and should be used at any point in time when you're vetting families, cleaning up families, creating new families, and also when you're updating your Revit templates. This is the product that can help you with all of those things. And we're going to get into some StyleManager today as well. And here's kind of my list, or my top 10 list of health items to address. And that's just using our 2 products that will be part of the demo today. I have a much longer list than that. But cleaning up styles and doing your QA QCs and your warnings review and management, addressing CAD imports, that's a big one, right? Excessive use of pinned elements, these kinds of things can actually slow your models down. When you have a lot of groups, when you have a lot of pinned elements, when you have a lot of rooms or volumes that are not enclosed, those kinds of things can really slow down your projects. So here's kind of a small list, shall we say, and here's kind of the 2 products that can help you with some of these issues here. even with BIMlink, we can do a much more comprehensive review, from a data perspective. But since we are focused just on StyleManager and Explorer, I figured I'd kind of put this list together. I'll keep this up here for just a moment, but just keep in mind that these two products can really help you clean up your models. Okay, so without further ado, what I'm just going to go ahead and do is get right into the demonstration. So we'll start off actually with StyleManager, and then I'm going to show you some stuff with Ideate Explorer. And again, keep in mind that what I'm going to show you here really applies to all disciplines. I'll be focusing on an architectural model and also an MEP model for today's demos, but this is scalable to those on the construction side of things, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, structural, and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch over to Revit. And you can see on my screen, I have this Autobahn file here, which is an architectural example. And we're just going to go ahead and get right into StyleManager. So all the tools can be found under the Ideate Software tab. And this is kind of the comprehensive list of all of our products. And I'll start with StyleManager. So as I mentioned before, Ideate StyleManager is the product that can help you really clean up the following styles that you can see right here, and help you bring your families, your templates, and your projects into alignment. And one of the things I like to talk about too with a product like StyleManager is, if you are, let's say, working on, let's say it's a government project, or you're working on a project for a customer that has its own styles and standards, and maybe you started with your own templates. A lot of times, your own templates and your own families and items like that do not meet the standards of your clients, right? So if you have a client that uses a special font, a special line style, object style, and all of that, how do you bring that into alignment? Well, StyleManager can help you kind of take your styles and merge them into their styles to bring your projects up to their compliance. So it's a really great product for helping with those kinds of workflows. But let's just kind of take a look at how this product works. So these are the categories that we currently analyze and help you clean up. And you can see it's quite a comprehensive list of styles here. And technically speaking, there's probably lots of other categories out there. And if you have any ideas, please let us know. We're more than happy to have a look at those. But I want to start off with the object styles. And when we talk about object styles, really what we're talking about here are the object style subcategories. So just as an example here, if I do come over to Manage and I come over to Object Styles and I look under here, we're really talking about the subcategories here, right? So you can see like casework, 0, hidden lines, and these base cabinet ones over here. We're really talking about these styles over here. And Revit doesn't tell you if they're being used or where they're being used. And I kind of want to know that information, right? This stuff's really important to find out because I need to know, are these being used? And if so, where? Because maybe they're not properly named, or maybe they're not properly used, or they came in from unvetted families. How do I clean this stuff up? So let's just take a look over here. I'm just going to take casework as a simple example, and I can double click on it. And what we do is we're going to take a look throughout your entire model. And when I say entire model, I mean entire model. Places that you would never think to look. And you can see over here it reports a 0. That means there are no uses found in this model. I can also bulk select these items and do an analysis. All right, you can see it's taking just a hair longer, right? That tells me that there are some use cases here, right? And so now when we, as this thing is starting to do its analysis, we're starting to get a list of where these styles are being used. So I'll show you here in just a moment after StyleManager does its review, and then you can see the results. So in this particular example over here, we've done the analysis for these items. And you can actually filter your list, especially on large projects where you're going to have a huge list and scrolling may take a long time. But now we can see here what has been analyzed. And we can say, show me what hasn't been used, right? Or what is not used. And if I wanted to, at this point, since I don't want this in my project, I could easily delete that, right? I can come back and say, okay, show me used. And now I'll just go ahead and zoom in on here, because I see a slight issue here. And really the difference between these two are the way they're named. Now, what you could certainly do is you could certainly come in here and go back to object styles and review the line settings and line weights and all that to make sure that they're the same, which you can absolutely do. But really what I want to do is say, okay, this particular style here called base cabinet dash elevation is being used in this family. I want to take this style and merge it with this one, so that this family right here is in compliance with the rest of these. And to do that, I'm going to do what I call the merge and purge. And what we basically do is we say, okay, we're going to select it, and then we're just going to merge it into that style. And what we do is we're going to open this family in the background within this project and merge that style into the correct style. And then we will go ahead and purge this one out of the project so it's no longer in use. And you can see over here that all usages have been replaced and that it's been deleted. Everything else here looks pretty good to me. So I'm very happy with the results. So I can go ahead and uncheck this if I want to bring back the full list. So that was kind of there within a family, right? But let's go ahead and look at something else over here. I'm going to come down maybe to some detail items, right? And here again, this is an absolute symptom, shall we say, of CAD files, right? These are CAD files that are just brought in, and basically when you link these CAD files in or explode them, they bring the styles into your project, right? And looking at these are all the AIA kind of standard of layers that, again, came in from exploded CAD files. So I'm going to just bulk select these, and depending on the complexities and how many use cases, it could take anywhere from 20 seconds to a minute to do the analysis. But we can see here that this one's going pretty fast, right? Okay, so when I come over here, you can see now that there are some uses of these this detail item and the subcategory called 0. And when I look at them, they're all in these detail items. And what I want to point out to you here, if we just kind of take a look, is I can actually go to the edit family, okay? So if I come to the edit family over here as part of my vetting process, what I want to do here is when I come over here, I can see in detail item 0, it highlights that. Now when I do the analysis, I can come in over here and see that these are all these subcategories, right? And if I kind of zoom in on it, we can see that it's all part of this family over here, right? And so these are not part of my standards, right? So again, we're talking about the top 10 ways that we can bring our model standards into compliance, right? So here's one of them where this is not a compliant family. So while back at the main project level, StyleManager will clean the family up and reload it into the project. If I wanted to use this family as a standard for all my projects, I can do the cleanup over here, merge it into a standard style. That way, going forward, everything is going to be in compliance. So that's the nice thing about hitting edit family, to really understand where the source of the problem came from. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So back over here, let me just come back to StyleManager. And so what I want to do in this case is if I come back to the detail items, and I'll just go ahead and pick a couple of these again and do the analysis. So basically coming back over here, what I can also do is, do some merging. And I'm just going to do a real simple one here just to kind of show you this process once again. But for this one over here, maybe what I want to do is merge it into, let's say, just detail items. Maybe I want this to be part of the main category of detail items. And just like before, we'll go ahead and clean that up. That family is now consistent in this project. If I want to go back and edit the family and clean it up at that level, I can absolutely do that as well. Okay, so that's a little bit, on object styles. Now I'm just going to come over here real quickly, and I'm going to switch over to a mechanical project. Okay, so again, I showed you an architectural example, but where could this help me maybe on the MEP side of things, or even structural? Let's take a look. So I'm going to come over to StyleManager, and what I want to do is maybe look at filters. And the reason why I have a lot of interest in filters is because a lot of times, especially on like the MEP side of things, a lot of the engineers are using rules that highlight systems, right? And so, and a lot of times we'll do, let's say, overrides for the views, right? I want to take a domestic hot water and I want to color it red, just as an example, right? Well, a lot of times you can have projects with a lot of filters, and as the projects get bigger and more complicated, people start creating more and more filters. And it may be that you have kind of repeat filters, or you use one filter for one scenario and another for another, but they were really the same kind of filter. That's a big deal, right? So this is where your project standards can get out of compliance. And this is where your models can start becoming bloated. And this is where, last minute deadline, people are rushing to do whatever they can to get the project out the door, not paying attention to the project health, right? So in this example here, we're listing all the filters, right? You can see here we have a list of question marks over here. And in this example over here, what I want to do is I just want to do an analysis. So I'm just going to pick a few of these over here. So let me just pick maybe these rules over here, and I'll just go ahead and hit analyze. So this shouldn't take too long over here. But what I'm basically doing at this point is I'm just doing analysis of these filters. And I want to know, where are these filters being used? All right, well, let's take a look over here. I have one, rule over here that says this one's being used in a first floor plan, okay, and it's this one over here. And what's nice about this too is, we have this edit overrides here. And I'm going to show you this in just a moment. We can see this domestic rule over here is being used in 40 scenarios, right? And I say scenarios because they can be used in view templates, and they can also be used in views. So it's important to kind of realize, like, all the use cases for filters, right? They're not just applied to views, but when you capture or make a view template from a view, that information is being captured in that, right? And so we want to make sure that we really have a good understanding of where these are being used. Now, I see one here. I'll just kind of show you. We have one here that says default system rule and default systems rule, right? These are rule-based filters, which is what we're kind of pointing out over here. Now, I get some basic information right up here, but one of the things I want to point you to in terms of bringing my project into compliance and cleaning up my standards, and this also applies to your Revit templates, because a lot of times people do create templates in their, or they create these filters as part of their templates, is I want to come over here and maybe hit the edit button. And what that's going to do is it's going to launch the filters dialog box, all right? And what I'm basically going to do is just have a quick look over here at the default system and the default systems. Is it possible we made two separate rules on accident, or maybe one rule was better than the other? That's really something that I need to decide. So for example, when I look at the default systems, I can kind of see some of the categories that they're applied to, and it just says all the selected categories where the system name contains the word default. Okay, and if I come over here, I can see, well, it looks like we went ahead and created a new rule and added some more items to it, but it's the same basic rule over here. It's where the system name contains the word default in it. The reality is the intended use case was the same for both of these. So maybe I don't want this one, I want it to be this one. Well, there is some danger, of course, in deleting this rule or this filter, because it's going to wipe it out of all my views, right? That may be using this particular rule. So that's where I want to use StyleManager to merge that, right? So, here they are. They're being used in these two views. Now, what I want to point out to you is, in these floor plans, like this floor plan, first floor, one of the things to kind of keep in mind, for this particular view, and by the way, I just double clicked on it to go to it, is that when we do a merge of things like filters, or we do a merge of things like view templates and all that, we're going to just basically do the swap out, right? So this one right here is going to get swapped out with this one. And the nice thing about that is whatever settings you apply over here, even if we swap this one out for the new one, it will still keep the settings as is over here, all right? So what I want to show you is the merging process. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to do the merge, and we're going to merge it into this one. And we're going to take those two views that we're using the default system rule and swap out those filters with the one that I want to basically merge it into. And just like that, we have replaced the uses. And the nice thing about that is if I come back and do the new analysis, because we're going to just reanalyze it, we should have more than the initial count for the views, because we've added two more to this one, right? And so the nice thing about this now is that those floor plans now have these view template, or these filters assigned to it, and we adhered and kept the settings. They were still visible, they were still red, and so forth. Everything else over here probably looks good. I can go back and do an analysis and have a look to make sure the settings are where I want them to be. But this will really help you bring your templates and your projects into compliance, and it will really narrow down that filters list and make sure that people are using the correct filters and not having some graphical display issues. Okay, another big one that I want to talk about, and I'll just use this mechanical file as an example here. But we have text, right? And as you know, text comprises of fonts. It has color settings. It has line weights. It has leaders, styles. It has all of that information. And you can actually see over here, we have a really long list of text over here, including really weird ones, right? Who knows where these came from? But one that people kind of overlook are fonts, right? And fonts are a big deal because fonts actually exist in a lot of places. They exist in annotation families, right? Where you're not using necessarily a text style, but you're using a font. They exist in schedules, right? So when you go to the schedules and you look at how the schedule is put together, they actually use fonts instead of assigning a text style. Now you'll notice I had clicked on the fonts button and StyleManager was kind of chugging away there, and it was actually doing kind of a pre-analysis. Now the interface here looks a little different. So earlier you heard me talk about, well, what if you're working on projects with consultants, or you're working on projects that have kind of a customer standard, and you started off using your own standards, right? So let's say you use Arial, but your client who wishes to have the project meet their standards uses Swiss fonts. Imagine having to go through your entire project and all your families and all your schedules and everywhere and swap out those font styles. That's a huge deal, right? Imagine all those annotation families you have loaded up, tons of them. You'd have to go in and edit each one of those families and swap out the fonts. So what we do over here actually is we're basically showing you a list of kind of where these fonts exist, right? So they, exist in these text styles over here, right? And you'll notice up over here it says not analyzed. That's annotation families, model families, and schedules. So the nice thing about StyleManager and helping you to bring your projects into compliance is that we can do a deeper analysis if we want to. And the second question mark that you kind of see over here really represents the deeper analysis. That's really what this means. As you could probably imagine, going through annotation, model families, and schedules take a little bit longer to do the analysis. So right now, we're just looking at kind of your text types and maybe wherever else fonts could be used. So take a look at this. I'm going to keep this pretty simple. I'm just going to select all of these and say our entire project uses Arial font. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. No problem. I can come over here and I can merge these. And we warn you, you haven't yet analyzed annotation families, model families, or schedules. We can do that later on if we want to. And then what we could do is say, what do you want to merge these into? I want to merge them into Arial. And look, you have, lowercase Arial and uppercase Arial, but I want to use this, this font style. I'll go ahead and merge it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into each one of those text families, right? The text that you have set up, and we're going to swap out the font for the correct font. That's a big deal. This could take you hours, and even if you try to do all of that, you may not capture all of them. So this is a great way to bring your models and projects into compliance, including your Revit templates, which, as you know, no matter how hard you try to bring your templates into compliance and clean them up, stuff still comes through thanks to transfer project standards, thanks to loading families. But you can see over here, we have went ahead and replaced all the fonts, and then we did that merge and purge. So now if I double click on this, the font style called Arial is being used now for all of these text notes, right? We never did the analysis yet of annotation families. I could certainly select these and do the analysis. It'll take a little bit of time to do, so I'm not going to do it for this particular demo, just in the interest of time. Real quickly, to help you bring your projects, templates, and families into compliance, I just want to point out a couple other things here before I show you some Ideate Explorer. But when we look at things like line patterns, again, a lot of these line patterns come in from transfer project standards, from exploded CAD files, and so forth. You can see here there's a long list over here. And you'll notice that we've color-coded things kind of immediately. These are randomly assigned color codes, but what they really represent are duplicates. And so, for example, if I select like this one here, and I look at the name and the line pattern, as I just kind of click on the down arrow, we could see that they're all the same. And then when I get to the next ones, we could see that they're all the same. So again, we can analyze the usage of all these, and then we can merge these into the appropriate style that we want to merge them into. And the same thing goes with filled regions. This is another one where we create a lot of the same filled regions. We just give them real specific names. Is that really appropriate? This is a great way to really, again, clean these up, bring your families, templates, and projects into compliance, streamline the models, right? Because if you have more of this data in here, it's going to add to the file size, it's going to add to the bloat, and it will just add to the confusion. So again, we can come in here and really analyze kind of each and every one of these. And view templates are an interesting one. You can see here we have a lot of view templates with no uses, right? We have a couple over here, mechanical plans, and you can see these are applied, to these element types. But again, do we want all of these? Well, maybe we just need to go ahead and remove the ones that we just don't need in here, clean up this model and avoid the confusion. So again, these can really help you out to help bring your projects and your models into compliance. Okay, I'm going to come back and switch gears now. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is show you a little bit of Ideate Explorer. So I'm going to come back over here to this architectural file. And this is kind of where I can do my on-demand review of my project. So this is my way of navigating my entire model. But not only that, how can I start taking a deeper dive or deeper look and start to understand how people are behaving in projects? Are they pinning too many things? Are they using too many groups and arrays? Are they making a lot of in-place families? Things that are known to cause performance issues and deviate from standards. When you launch Ideate Explorer, by default, we kind of launch this main window over here. We're displaying kind of the active view. And what we're getting here is kind of an element count for the active view, okay? And we're sorting everything by category. So in this particular view, there are 20 arrays that are showing up, or 152 pieces of casework, okay? One of the things that I like to do initially as part of my weekly model audits to control file size and look at behaviors is I like to kind of just go to entire project by category. And one of the first things I like to look at are just how many elements exist in this model. And again, it's really hard to determine is that an appropriate amount or not. So a lot of times it's like, okay, that's a great summary, right? But I can really start coming down this list and start looking at the ones that have a lot of usage. I can say, okay, 539 groups sounds like a lot. And I know from past experiences that groups can weigh heavily on your models. They can cause performance issues. And also a lot of times people just group things and don't give them appropriate names. So what is group one? That's always a great question. So these are the kinds of things that I want to look at as part of my weekly audit. So this is one of the things that I like to do is just kind of have a look, at my model from this level. But as I mentioned before, this is a great tool to just help you kind of get to things or look at things. Like for example, if I put a selection here, I just selected all 59 doors in my entire project, right? And you can see that right there. We confirmed 59. And if I come down over here to the filters tab, we also confirmed just using the Revit filters that, yep, there are 59 elements that have been selected, okay? The thing about Revit is this is as far as it goes. Revit isn't going to tell you what doors you've selected. It just says you've selected doors. Well, the nice thing about Ideate Explorer is I can now have a closer look at these doors, right? Okay, I have 7 of these curtain wall single glass doors. And if I wanted to, I'm just going to expand this. I can take a look at the different types that I have over here, and then I can get down to the individual instances. So if I wanted to, I could select this and double click on it, and we'll zoom into this element for you right here. I can unselect that and select the next one and kind of take a look at it from this perspective. So from just a navigation perspective, I love Explorer for this. It's just so fast and nimble and so accurate. And if this isn't the right door, I can change it out for another one, right? An easy just select and replace if you want to. Okay, so that's how I use Explorer to just navigate around a model. All right, so for those of you that are in charge of kind of model auditing, before I get into a little bit more of this, I am going to switch over and look at warnings because this is a really big deal to address in your Revit models. As I mentioned before, warnings are known to cause issues in projects. There are certain types of warnings that are kind of low level. They don't really necessarily cause performance issues. They're probably more of an annoyance. But there are other types of warnings that can cause issues, whether they actually cause performance issues like room or space is not in an enclosed region. That actually can cause performance issues because Revit is looking for a way to calculate that room area and its bounds, right? And if you have lots of rooms that are not enclosed, that becomes a bigger issue. And if all your rooms or spaces are not enclosed, it could just be that you have a linked file that isn't set to room bounding, and that's an easy fix, right? You'll notice over here in Ideate Explorer that we have these color codes here. And these kind of represent low, medium, and high ranked warnings, okay? These are warnings that we went ahead and ranked ourselves, knowing what we know from our software development and also, working on a lot of Revit models and testing performance. So we've gone ahead and we've ranked, I don't know, probably around 60 warnings. with this kind of high, medium, and low rankings. There's a whole way that you can set, configurations and kind of map some settings here, like how many warnings per megabyte do you want to be warned at, when you have too many warnings. You can configure all of that. You can export and import, warning rankings. We're not going to get into that today, but you're free to actually rank your own warnings. And we ship Ideate Explorer with all of the warnings rankings files. So if you want to get access to all 900 plus warnings, you're free to load that up and rank the warnings that you want to rank and push that out to your entire team so that when they launch Ideate Explorer in their projects, the warnings are ranked per your standards. You can absolutely do that. But here's other things that you could do. Like, for example, line and sketch is slightly off axis. We decided to kind of rank that as a low-level warning. All right, that sounds good. But there are a lot of times customers say, I don't want to be bothered by seeing this warning in here. Kind of is what it is. And the nice thing is, you can right-click and hide it. And it doesn't hide it from Revit, but what it actually does is it kind of hides it from the interface so you're not accidentally focusing on that. You can always come back to the filter here and show the hidden warnings if you want to. So you can always, bring them back into the interface if you want to and unhide it, right? So again, you can kind of clean this up and simplify the process. You can also re-rank warnings, like elements have duplicate mark values. Well, maybe I want to set that to a medium rank. Maybe because I want to understand why they're set to why they have a duplicate value. That may be a big deal to you, right? So I'll make it a medium because it may not be a high ranked warning. And the nice thing about this is, as part of your weekly audits, we should be addressing high ranked warnings first and foremost. These are ones like identical instances in the same place that could have scheduling impacts, right? It could maybe add to some performance issues. Those are things that could very well happen. And then once you address those, you can come in and say, okay, I'm going to look at medium ranked. And then if I have a lot of time and budget, as I always like to joke, I can come in here and address low ranked warnings if I really want to do that. Okay. So just some things that you can do over here to really help you with this interface here. Okay. So now what do? Well, let's just take a look over here. If I click at the high level over here, highlighted walls overlap, we immediately highlight those elements. And because Explorer is modeless, I can come over here and, isolate those elements if I want to. And I can kind of take a look over here. You can put Explorer on a second screen, if you wanted to. So that's pretty helpful, right? I'll just go ahead and kind of reset this. But, other ways. Well, I can come over here and I can select these two items over here. And one of the things that I like to do is use a selection box. And when I use a selection box, I can isolate those elements like this. And then that helps me to click on the individual elements and I can get some basic information about it and who created and who last updated. That doesn't necessarily mean you should go blame that person. This person may have created it properly, but somebody that updated it may have actually generated the warning. I like to use last updated by and say, hey, I need you to fix these warnings because I don't want to have to clean them up because it takes a lot of time, right? But again, I can kind of take a look at these and say, oh, you know what? I may have found the issue over here. I see the overlap, right? And right now I have 16 of these types of warnings. So where does this come in handy? Well, I could select this element over here, maybe detach the wall and hit detach all. And just like that may have been an easy fix. Now sometimes I do need to come back over here, make absolutely sure it's connected in the right position. But you can see just like that, it's now down to 15 warnings. And what's great is I can select these ones and I can't see them. No problem, because I can hit the selection box and go to the next one, right? And same thing over here, I can start clicking here and I can start seeing maybe where the issue is. And again, I can say, well, let's detach this one and maybe start with that, right? And if it doesn't clean up the issue yet, then I can need to come in here and probably change the wall height, right? And you can see up here it goes with a 2-foot offset. Maybe I'll make it 0. And hopefully that cleans up the warning. And if I wanted to, I can come in and do a further investigation, but now we can see that that one is cleaned up, right? And notice when I select this whole tree over here, I'm not seeing this wall highlighted, but there's still some other conflicts over here. So this is an easy way to kind of help you go through and navigate the warnings, which are never fun to do, but Explorer is incredibly powerful, from this perspective. I'm going to show you one more way to address these warnings. Let me just go ahead and hit escape here and remove the section box. But what else can I do? Well, this one's an interesting one here. They're identical instances in the same place. And one of the things I want to point out to you here is, what we're doing here is we're basically highlighting the elements that have duplicates. So I'll just come in over here. I'll just double click and kind of zoom in on it. And, I can navigate around if I need to get a better look. And by the way, this product works in floor plan views and so forth. I just use these 3D views because I can kind of see everything all at once. But I can start seeing a consistent pattern here, right? All right, and I see, okay, now I got a table over here, and I got these duplicates. For this particular warning, one of the things I like to do here is we actually have a built-in feature here where I can say I want to keep or retain the originally created elements, or I want to keep or retain the newer placed elements. And we basically identify that based on element ID number. This is a lower number than this. This is a lower number than that, and so forth. So one of the things I like to do is if I do hit retain originals, what we essentially do with this one is we highlight all the newer ones, and I can actually delete those from here. One of the things that I like to do before I do a deletion here, and I am going to go just slightly against the grain of saying I'm only going to talk about Ideate Explorer and Ideate StyleManager today, but I want to point out in a situation like this, before I do a wholesale deletion, while they're still selected, I actually like to come up here and go to my Smart Delete program. And the only reason why I like to do that is I want to make sure that before I delete everything, I want to see if there's any sort of dependencies on what I'll be deleting. So for example, for the 3 pieces of casework, there are no dependencies, meaning there's nothing attached to those elements, and deleting them is safe. When I come over here to the furniture, I don't see any dependents, but as I scroll down, I see these bold elements over here. And it's like, okay, I'm going to lose some chairs. I get that. Those are part of the family. I'm not worried. And I'm going to lose some tags. Okay, I'm really not worried about losing a few tags. Maybe I've expected that. And hopefully the original elements are tagged. So if I feel good about my selection over here, I'll just go ahead and take these 55 elements and watch what happens here and watch what happens here. I go to Ideate Delete, and we're going to remove those 55 elements. And now I no longer have high ranked warnings in my project. So just like that, I was able to clean that up and clean it up safely and make sure that what I was about to delete was going to be a safe move. All right, so this can really help you get your project and your health really clean by going through your warnings. Again, excessive warnings will cause performance issues. They will cause model upgrade issues, just things you don't want to have to deal with. So I highly recommend that you always do your warnings at least on a weekly basis, and include that in part of your BIM execution plans. As I explained before, it's really important to have those BIM execution plans as part of your weekly model audits. Okay, so that's just a little bit on the warning stuff. Let's look at other things that you can do to bring your projects into compliance. One of the things that I like to do is I like to look at my entire project by category, and I like to filter by work sets, right? And so I come over here and I say by category, and I'll switch over to the work set. And what's great about this is we will reorganize the tree and show you some of the work sets. As you're probably well aware, there are project standard work sets and view work sets that Revit kind of self-assigns, and we don't really have any control over that. So for example, if I selected this elevation over here, I can't change, I guess you can change some of the work set information if you wanted to, but a lot of times you're not allowed to change that kind of information, right? But the ones that I'm actually really concerned about are my own work sets, and these are the user created ones. And you can see over here, I have a plumbing fixture work set, it's shared levels and grids, site, and work set 1. And what I'm looking for are anomalies. When I expand this one, I see I have some plumbing fixtures, but I have a wall. Well, that's interesting. Is it a plumbing wall? I don't know, maybe, but it's not a plumbing fixture, even if it was a plumbing wall. And if I double click on it, it's an exterior wall. So just by looking at the category, I'm like, that's pretty weird. Okay, somebody put it on the incorrect work set. I'm going to move it to the correct work set. In this case, I'm going to put it in work set 1, right? And just like that, I've reassigned the work set for that wall. Now, since it's still selected, it's part of work set 1. And same thing over here. I can come over here and look at shared levels and grids. I see everything here looks great. I come to site. Everything here is probably good. And if I come to work set 1, again, I can come over here and say, are there plumbing fixtures here? Yes, there are. Okay. Well, again, maybe I want to grab some of these plumbing fixtures and move them to the plumbing fixtures work set. And just like that, I can audit and clean up my work sets. Well, why is it important to do that? Well, a lot of times people use work sets for visibility controls. And there's 2 schools of thought. You should never use work sets for visibility controls. Oh, you should. But if you're using work sets for visibility controls and you're putting things on the incorrect work set, and you have a view on a sheet that has a certain work set turned off, well, those elements are not going to show up, and that could be a liability to you, right? So that's more the QA QC portion, and using Ideate Explorer to help you with that, right? All right, well, what else can we do, with this? Well, another one that we built in here is Ideate Audit. And Ideate Audit is a really great filter. So I'm going to go back to by category, and I'm going to use Ideate Audit. And what we've done is we've taken the long list of categories and we filtered them down by the categories that you should review. And we're not saying just because you see things in here that they're bad, but what are we looking for? Well, we're looking at arrays, because arrays are known to cause performance issues, especially if you have a lot of groups and arrays in conjunction with each other. That can cause issues. Groups, a lot of heavy model groups can and will cause performance issues. Can we eliminate some of those? Why are we drawing so many lines? Maybe a lot of those lines came from exploded CAD files. Maybe I should use Ideate Explorer and or StyleManager to clean these up, right? These are the kinds of things that we're looking for. And of course, CAD imports. That's a lot of CAD imports. The goal here would be to not see this show up when I bring up the Ideate Audit. If you don't see CAD imports show up, it means you have 0 CAD imports in your project. And congratulations, that's awesome. So let's just take a quick look over here and see some of these. Like, let's look at groups as an example. To me, there's a lot of groups in this tiny little project. And as I told you before, model groups are known to weigh down the model. So, again, I see, groups here that are somewhat appropriately named, and then I see ones that are not appropriately named, like what is group 1 and what is array group 1, right? And so easily I can come in over here and just select these elements. And if I wanted to, I can come in over here and isolate them, right? And I can come in and say, okay, well, what are these things, right? And I see that somebody did a lot of arrays with these chairs. Again, there's a family for this that actually already has the chairs in here, but somebody went ahead and kind of loaded them up manually and then did this array, like this polar array, and then just kept the group and the array. Well, I want to simplify this model. This is done. This furniture is placed. We're not going to make any changes. So in a situation like this, I'll go ahead and ungroup it. And in this case, it says that it's in a nested group. Sounds good to me. Let's just ungroup that whole thing. And just like that, I'm going to be cleaning up those groups. And now when I come down over here to groups, I went from 500 some groups down to 284. And look how much simpler this is, right? Now, if you're not ready to ungroup this, that's probably okay. But when you're ready to, do it. Because again, groups will cause performance issues. So I'm looking at groups from a performance issue, but I'm also looking at it from a naming perspective. This is just, these are not properly named. What is group 1? I don't know. Let's double click on it. Oh, okay, group 1 was a metal stud bottom track. Well, the thing about that is, let's just say if I go to edit group over here, take a look at this. When I look at this, these are all drawn. These are all hand drafted lines. This is a double whammy. The problem with this one is there already exists a detail component for this. So I should have used a detail component, not hand draw lines and group it, and then not give the group an appropriate name. At the least, this should have been called metal stud bottom track. But the reality is I shouldn't see a group for this. This should really have been a detail component. And the cool thing about addressing something like this particular group is I can edit the group, delete the lines, put the detail component in here to actually place it, update all the groups, and then ungroup them. And I would have basically done a workaround for a swap out. Because if I come in over here and delete these, I'd have to go back and replace them manually, and that's a lot of work. So you can get kind of clever, from that standpoint. All right, let's look at CAD imports. These are probably the most evil thing in this entire list. 181. And again, I'm looking at, what are these, CAD imports, right? And so, I don't know, let's just take a look at some of these. Here's some mounting heights, right? Architects mostly use these, right? Probably some interiors folks that are in charge of handling, some of the ADA compliances. But, this probably came in from an old AutoCAD file where back in the day, they kind of drew these in AutoCAD and went ahead and just carried them forward into Revit. But, I click this and I see this is that import symbol. Yet somebody did the right thing and used like a legend component for Revit, right? So these are real Revit components, and these are not. These are actually AutoCAD DWGs. So at this point, you have to make a choice whether you want to explode them and then swap out all the line work for Revit lines, or whether you want to actually delete these and come back in and put a legend component in here and make that choice. That's really up to you on how you want to proceed with that. So again, these are great, from these auditing perspectives. The other one that I'll just show you real quickly is, I have a mechanical engineer here that that's still using maybe AutoCAD, and they gave me this makeup air unit that's going to be in this mechanical room. The downside to importing these things is, let's just say, for example, I go to move this. All right, I'm going to move it and disjoint it because I think there's a constraint here. And let's just say we're told to move it, back, 2 inches, right? So I'll just go ahead and move it back 2 inches, right? So I go to move it. It's going to say I'm going to lose a dimension. Not a big deal. And you're like, well, that's great. This works for me. But the problem is, if I come back over to my CAD imports and I look at these other makeup air units and I go to this view, we're going to see here that there's going to be a gap difference, right? And there actually is a gap difference. So there's no correlation between these views. Really what I should do is delete these out of the project. And if they're still using AutoCAD, at least link the DWG into the project. So be sure to really clean up CAD imports. Again, if you've exploded them, you can merge the line styles by using StyleManager. You can use Ideate Explorer to help you select some of those things. No problem over there. All right, we have just a couple more minutes for a demo, and then we'll take some questions here. But I just want to show you Ideate Query because I absolutely love Ideate Query. I'm just going to come over to one of my views over here. And by the way, in Navigate here, cleaning up your models and streamlining them, just even looking at views that are not on sheets and deciding, can I get rid of a view? Can I? Absolutely, right? And help really clean this up and clean out these unused views over here. That's a big deal. But I'm just going to use Explorer to get back to the one view that I really like. You see how I use Navigate just to do that. All right, this is a big one here. One of the things I want to point out to you is, here's entire project by category, and I'm going to go back to none, and this is kind of my full list of categories. And, I could start selecting certain categories of elements over here, right? And I could say I want to do a deeper dive. I want to look more at the information, right? And what I'm talking about is when you expand these families, we stop basic the instance level, but we don't give you any more information about that. How do I get more granular with my selection? Well, that's where Ideate Query can come in handy. One of the things I want to point out to you is if I go to my view and I go to filters, I actually have a filter here that I called QA/QC typical in-place categories. I actually made a filter to just select some categories where I know a lot of people are creating in-place families. Now, there's nothing in here for the rule that says, in place. That doesn't exist in Revit, okay? But what I could do is I could use that filter as a selection. So I could manually select the categories here. It's not a big deal. It takes 2 seconds, but why not bring up my filter, which will then shorten up the list, and I can do a quick selection over here, and I can come over to Query. I love Query. This is a game changer for me, and the reason why is Query allows me to further refine my selection by a long list of parameters, okay? Things that you've never seen in a model, okay? Does it have a split face? What about its handing? Did somebody actually flip the model component or detail component when they brought it into the project? Are they nested? Are they pinned? These types of things. So take a look at this. I'm just going to type in a couple of keywords here. I want to know who created all these instances. And we can see this guy did. That would be me. Okay, no problem. Are any of these elements pinned? Are the instances pinned? And if I hold down the control key, I can do up to 3 properties at once. Who created and who pinned? Okay, some are pinned, some are not. And then I want to know, are any of these in place families? If I hold down the control key, now I can get a nice list of, are any of these pinned? Are any of them in place? And my focus today are on in place families. You'll notice over here that I have 3 that are pinned and in place. And then I have 25 that are in place but are false in terms of being pinned. Okay, well, I just want to grab these ones over here. And of that large selection, I can select these 25 elements, and then I can go ahead and isolate those. And these are all my in-place families, and some of these ones are actually pinned. Okay, what a nice way to actually refine your selection over here. Okay, and then just the last part I want to show you on the MEP side of things. I don't know if any of you MEP folks have run into this before, but what I want to point out to you is there are times in which people specify mechanical equipment, they download the manufacturer's equipment, they bring it into the model, and then they flip it. And that's bad, right? Because it may be designed to be installed one way, but now what happened was somebody brought it in and flipped it and did the design based on equipment that actually doesn't exist. So here's an example of me taking mechanical equipment and even electrical equipment as an example. I come to query, and I'm almost done here. Richard will take these questions, but now I'm going to come over to query and say, okay, I want you to tell me, query, are any of these flipped or has a handing been changed? So I could scroll down here and I could say, is, because that's really what we're looking for. Do any of them have a facing flipped, right? And do any of them have a handing flip? This is kind of like a door where you flip a door left to right or front to back. That's what we're talking about. And then I also want to know who created them, just so I can have a chat with them. And then I can go ahead and hold down the created by, and then I can get an idea as to what's been flipped. So I can see over here, I have something where it's been flipped kind of front to back. I want to have a talk with this person. I'll go to select those elements. And now if I isolate them, these are the elements that were placed in the model and flipped. So I can go in and now and start taking a closer look and saying, nope, this can't be designed to be installed this way. We need to go back and flip it the way it was designed or the way it was intended to be installed, and we need to update the design to reflect the changes. So this is great before you end up with an RFI and an ultimate expensive change order out in the field. So that's all I have today to help you bring your compliance or your models into compliance, help you with model performance issues. Richard, do we have any questions that we can read aloud and answer?
Yeah, I thought one was actually kind of a little bit more generic and good, was the fact of they were asking about the version that you were using. And people may not be aware. If they want to check their version, if they're a current Ideate Software customer, you can just go to the upper right of any of our solutions, and you can see that there's a check for updates, and it will tell you what version you're on. So if when Sash selects that, and then you can go out to the web just to verify that it's either up to date, or if it's not, then you can download the latest software. So that was someone had a question about the version of Ideate StyleManager that you use. So that's available for all of our applications that you see. And then since you're in StyleManager, there was another great question, and I think you mentioned this, but I wasn't quite sure. And that's if when you do a change on Ideate StyleManager to one of the families, let's say you're updating the line style for a furniture family. The question was, does it change the family outside of the project? Meaning, let's say you've got that chair that's sitting out on the disk somewhere. Would it update that? And so the quick answer is no. It's only updating the actual families that are loaded into the project.
Yep, that is correct. So like, for example, and I haven't tested this one out, so I'd have to see which one, we got some furniture in here, but it's interesting, these mechanical models, some of the stuff that's actually in here, but if any of these let me just go to this other project over here. I think this will probably be better for us from this standpoint.
Well, and I was just using furniture as an example. I didn't have to be
absolutely. No, it's a good one, right? So like, for example, if I were to come over to the furniture category, so, here we go, right? And let's just pick hidden lines. It's probably a big one. Oh, wow, look at this. We're picking all the ones that we're just shooting in the dark over here, right? So we can see there's like no uses here. Okay, wow. Furniture, Richard, you picked it. Okay, wow. Okay, well, it looks like there's no usage over here, but actually,
really any family. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I mean, basically any family you saw when Sash did the update to the families that on the first part of the presentation. That family, if you did want to like save it out to disk, then you'd have to save the file via the project browser. Otherwise, if you imported it again, you're going to get that same kind of junk that you got the first time, if there was, for lack of a better word, or let's say non-approved styles. How's that sound?
Yep, exactly. So like here, I found one, door plan swing. If you want this style and you want a door plan swing to become hidden lines, what we're essentially doing when we do the merge over here is we are opening up each one of these families within the project and doing the swap out there. We are not opening up the family outside of the Revit model, doing the save onto your server. And there's various reasons why. Number one is, do you have read-write access to that data, right? are you trying to clean up your own standards? And if you did that, you would overwrite potentially your office standards. That's not good, right? So if you needed to make the change over there, what you would do is you could do the change here. You could certainly export the family and save it out again if you want to. Or, after you're done, you can select any one of these families over here and hit the edit family button and make the change in there if you want to. But all this is kind of done internally for very good reasons. But yeah, in this case, we opened up each one of those families, did the swap out, and reloaded it in here, but we didn't save that data outside of it. All right.
And I think those were the most sort of questions that are most relevant to the overall group. So okay. I know we're right at the top of the hour.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. More than happy to help. Again, hopefully this was a good starting point to help you understand the importance of cleaning up your models, not only from a performance standpoint, but also from a standards perspective. And there's a lot of other ways to do this. There's a lot of other workflows. Again, given the allotted time, we just showed you some of them, but just to put this on your radar and help you really be aware of the importance of managing standards and performance as well, or model health for that standpoint. Katana,